Okay, everybody, welcome to yet another NOVA Scribes and Retooling you. Some of you were here like an hour ago. It's nice to have you back. So again, just a quick, if this is your first time attending, a little bit of context setting. So NOVA Scribes is a free and open forum for visual practitioners. We're a meetup group that started in around 2016. Anybody that sits at the intersection of the visuals and group processes, well, you're a visual practitioner. We recently entered into a strategic partnership with these guys, the IFVP, the International Forum of Visual Practitioners, and they're sort of like the industry body of people who are graphic facilitators and graphic recorders. And yeah, Martha, we recorded it, so you'll be able to see that in a minute. As soon as we get it posted, it'll be up there. But yeah, we did one about an hour ago, and let me just give a little bit of context around Retooling you. So Retooling you is a workshop series that NOVA Scribes has launched because we are based in Northern Virginia, and Northern Virginia is awfully close to Washington, D.C., and D.C. is going through some stuff right now. I think it's a good idea when people get laid off, when jobs kind of go away, to take a step back and say, all right, maybe this is a sign. Maybe this is a chance for me to do a little bit of retooling and to kick off my facilitation practice or to kick off my life as a graphic facilitator. And so that's what Retooling you is all about. There's really two parts of it. One of it is focusing on the business skills. The other one is focusing on the graphic facilitation skills. Today, we are going to focus on the business side of things for the next hour or so. And what we're going to focus on is guiding principles. Okay. By the way, I went looking for the kitschiest image of a ship and a lighthouse that I possibly could find, and I think I found it. I think this is pretty bad. I mean, there's like literally a galaxy around here somewhere. You know, it's like, okay, are they going to see a galaxy? The reason I wanted to share this with you is because I believe that guiding principles are one of those things that serves as kind of a waypoint, as a guiding light, that keeps you moving the direction that you want to be moving. Um, Especially when things are a little bit foggy, especially when things are a little ambiguous or cloudy. You can go back to your guiding principles and say, all right, am I operating in such a way that is in keeping with the way that I said that I want to be operating? Okay. And so with that in mind, let me also say that this one's going to be a little bit more introspective. This one's going to be a little bit more reflective. This is about you as an individual working on some stuff on your own. And so let me, without further ado, zoom up to define what I mean when I say guiding principles. You hear a lot of words thrown out. There's core values, operating norms, ground rules, guiding principles. One way that you could look at it is this way, and again, this is not definitive, it's just the way that I tend to look at it, is that there are really two worlds. One world is the task world, and the task world is the world of your position description, your business plan, what's in your inbox, what's on your task list. It's the stuff that has to get done. So on the one hand, there's the task world. And then there's also the human world. The human world is one of interpersonal dynamics. It's one of trust building. I think that this is really where communication lives. Email might be a task world thing, but I think real communication lives in the human world, and you have to have both. And by the way, I think that's Ron Heifetz, but let me double check on that one for the task world and human world. And if we take that dichotomy of the task and human, you can extend it to all kinds of things. As a facilitator, I try to make sure that not only am I checking the box on the task stuff that my clients typically hire me to do, but we're also doing some human world stuff. Because this is, again, this is where you build trust. And if you don't have trust, you don't have anything. You're not going to be hearing people's best ideas. You're going to get artificial harmony. So we could take that same dichotomy of the task and the human world and extend it into what we mean when we say guiding principles. So one way of looking at it is that your core values are the human side of your principles, and then the operating norms are the task side of your guiding principles. Okay? And again, this is not definitive. It's just the way that I look at it to make sense. But either way, these are behaviors that are essential for us to be in partnership with each other. Okay? So when we talk about the guiding principles, these are the things that I need from you and the things that you can expect from me, such that we can be in full partnership and full alignment so that we can work together. Okay? So with that in mind, let's get you into a Google Doc. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share this link. So give me just a second. So this is going to be anybody with a link can, now I'm going to do this as a view only, and you'll see why in just a second. Okay. But if you find your way to Zoom chat and go ahead and click on this, all right, you should be able to view only this thing. And then as soon as you're in there, I'll give you further instructions. Well, all right, here's the instructions now. As soon as you're there, go ahead and make a copy of this for yourself so that this can be a resource that you keep, that you fill out on your own. So go up to the File menu in Google Docs and then hit Make a Copy. All right. I hope the settings are such that you're able to do that. Were you able to do that? Yeah. Thank you, Martha. I appreciate it. Tiff, thanks for the confirmation. So make a copy of this for yourself because this will be your own. And then I suggest you close the one that I gave you, just so that we're not in the same place. You wouldn't be able to edit this one anyway, but I'll use my screen in order to show you where we're supposed to be. Okay. Does anybody not have a copy of this yet? Mary Jo, still working on it? Need a hand? Let me know if you need a hand. Okay, Lisa's good. So you're going to click on the link that's in chat, Mary Jo. You're going to go up to File up here, and then you're going to click Make a Copy, and then you're going to give me 2 thumbs up because you did it. Yay, look at that, she got it. Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into the first part of these, which are the core values. Okay, so we're going to do a values sort, and I dropped a picture of what a value sort looks like when you're in the room. By the way, these are the Kouzes and Posner values cards. If you decide to replicate this with a client, I would highly recommend you get yourself a deck of cards from Kouzes and Posner. Just a little bit of a side with them. They did what's called the Leadership Challenge, which is this big body of knowledge around what it takes to be a leader. And I'd highly recommend it just because it's awesome. But besides that, they have one of the best card sorts that's out there. We're going to do one. So here's what I'd like you to do. Find your way to this page right here where it says highlight, and then it's got a whole bunch of words. Okay. Here's what I'd like you to do. Go through this list, and I want you to highlight the values that drive you. So this is the ones that motivate you to be your best self. These are the ones that get you out of bed with energy and enthusiasm, ready to face the day. These are not necessarily what you might consider to be, I don't know, table stakes values or price of entry values or even core and fundamental values. Another way of saying that is like, well, this is just important. Yeah, I get that it's important. But is it the kind of thing that really fuels you? Is it the kind of thing that gives you energy? So for example, and it depends on who you are, sometimes honesty, integrity. Well, if they don't have honesty and integrity, I can't work with them. I get it. But is honesty and integrity that kind of thing that really motivates you and gets you out of bed? Are those table stakes, or is it something that fuels you and energizes you? So let's do this. I'm going to pause the recording and give you just a little bit of time to like go through this. If you find something that, again, motivates you to be your best self, gets you out of bed with energy and enthusiasm, drives you to be your best self, go ahead and highlight that. Okay, thank you very much. So you've got your highlighted list of the values that really drive you. Again, these are the things that motivate you. This is the stuff that gives you some rocket fuel, okay? So then what I'd like you to do is to scroll down a little bit, and I'd like you to narrow down that list. This is the hardest thing I'm going to ask you to do today, okay? This is really tricky. But I do want you to narrow down that list to 10 or 15. Now, am I going to be sitting over your shoulder if you put 16 on that? No, I'm not. So, get it down to a good workable number. And if you're like, oh, I really have to have 20, fine, put the 20 down. But take just a minute and narrow down your list and go ahead and retype them right here. You'll need them in just a second. I'll give you some time and I'll pause the recording. All right, so we're going to pick up right here where it says narrow down the list to your top 10 to 15 values. At this point, you should have your top 10 to 15. Then, to Kasimi's point earlier, I'm going to have you do some clustering. So are there any natural groupings of these values? Are any of them related to each other? So I'd like you to rewrite those 10, 15, 20, however many you narrowed it down to, and then group them into these clusters. So for example, some of my core values are freedom, autonomy, independence, and flexibility, and those are kind of related to each other. So I put them in the same cell up here. So go ahead and take just a couple of minutes and find any natural groupings. Now, if there's some that you left off from the last activity, if you want to go back to the original list and say, oh, this one was really important, but I had to leave it off because it was only 10 or 15, you can go ahead and grab it now. This is just to give it a little bit of structure. So again, you're looking for some natural groupings, some clusters. I'll go ahead and pause the recording and give you a couple minutes to do this one. Okay. So that's it. Those are your core values, and that's as far as we're going to take this. Now, here's what I would well, let me suggest how you might use these core values, and then I want to open it up and hear from you all how you might use these things. So core values and operating norms, guiding principles writ large, are something that I go over with my teammates a lot. They come up in daily conversation as a way of really just checking ourselves and our behavior to say, okay, this is kind of a little kludgy. Maybe we're dealing with a really difficult client, or this is a tricky situation, or maybe there's something that we're facing that, this is sort of uncharted territory. We go back to our guiding principles and say, well, what have we already decided that we will do? What behaviors have we already named that we're going to do here? And usually once we read through this, it's like, okay, this is pretty clear how we're going to go. In terms of the core values specifically, here's what I would suggest, is that once you have them and once you've got them named, is that you share them with your teammates, you share them with your associates, you share them with the people that you work with, and you say, look, here are the things that are important to me. I often share part of these with my clients, even at the discovery call, to say, here's what's important to me, here's my role, as a way of really outlining, what my responsibility is and what their responsibility is. When we bring somebody new on, as Chris and I recently did, we hired somebody that was going to help us out with our proposal writing. We'll share our core values, and then we'll invite this person to say, what are yours? And this does a lot to build trust and to set expectations. Okay. So that's how we use them. Let me open it up to you all. How might you see yourselves using core values? And if you've got a thought around this, just go ahead and go off mute and we'll talk about it. Maybe I should pause the recording. Oh, Tiff, there we go.
You named mine, right? Like that decision making where you're really struggling with what's the right thing to do. Looking at that list and saying, maybe one or two jumps out at you and saying, what would a person with the core value of integrity, what would they do next?
Yeah, yeah,
Right. And
exactly.
it makes simple and obvious sense normally. And then telling people who you are and what's important to you. It helps manage expectations and surface deeper understandings. We don't tell each other stories about why we're doing something.
Yeah, I think it's really, really good context settings. Like, here's who I am, here's what my identity is. I see you, Nancy. And then, you know, to your point earlier, it's almost like if you're in like this, what do we do? What's the right thing? When you go back and you look at this, it's almost like the decision's already been made. Nancy, what were you going to say?
Was going to say that I use it to decide whether, even to decide whether or not to take an engagement. Like impact really matters to me. And I don't want to work with an organization where I don't think I'm going to really be able to have an impact because either they've really already decided what they want to do,
Yeah.
or it's just kind of a rubber stamp kind of thing, or I don't feel that it doesn't, what the organization does doesn't really align with my own personal beliefs.
Yeah, totally, totally. By the way, and Kissimmee and Shane, I see you. I want to build on what Nancy just said a second ago. So yesterday, Chris and I were involved in a discovery call, and it was pretty apparent pretty quickly that the people that we were talking to were just checking a box. What they wanted us to do, like they were told by somebody senior in the organization, we just want you to get this thing done. And the people that we were talking to had like zero energy around it. So getting back to what Nancy said about impact, it's like, nah, I don't want to help you guys just check a box, right? If you're not committed to this, if you're not in this at least as much as I will be, then I'm not going to do this. Now, we didn't necessarily tell them no, but we did triple the price on it, just as a kind of as a forcing function to say, well, maybe if they want to do it, like here's what it's going to cost. All right, Shana, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say that this was an interesting activity because when I looked at the list of characteristics at first, I had to pause because I was like, okay, who am I really and who do I think other people want me to be? So
Yes.
so um so so it's I don't know, I guess the way that I would use this is just to take more time to make sure that I'm truly being honest with myself about what's important to me. And as I, look at how to be, stronger in a facilitating business or practice, like to understand who I am really and not just try to, as you mentioned, check off the box or just fit into what somebody else's peg of me, what they want. Because I think when you lose that authenticity, you lose the magic that brings you.
Absolutely. And Kissimmee, I see you. I want to add to what Shayna just said, okay? So let me also, for you facilitators and consultants and coaches out there, let me show you something that's called images of organization, okay? I'm going to do a quick divergence to show you a tool, but this is a very, very powerful principle poster, okay? So let me just see if I can draw this out. Yeah, that works pretty well. This is an organization, okay? And then when we join an organization, that's you. When you join an organization, there we go. When you join an organization, you do so because your interests are aligned. And they're aligned on all kinds of different levels. You're aligned because, they have money. You want money. That's a thing. Because there's, it fuels your curiosity. You're aligned on purpose. Maybe they give you, a career ladder that you can follow, right? There's opportunities for promotion, advancement, all that good stuff, okay? And so ideally, now this doesn't always happen, but ideally when you join an organization, your interests are aligned. And hopefully the more senior you get in your career, this is how you're making your decision about what kind of job you want to take on. When you're 14 years old and working at a hot dog stand, probably not so aligned, but maybe. Now here's what happens. Over time, values can shift. And people are like, well, wait a minute, aren't values eternal and like these never ending things? The answer is no, they're not. I mean, if you had told me, 30 years ago that my favorite car would be a Chevy Suburban, I would have I probably would have slapped you. I drive a Chevy Suburban. I can put 4 graphic walls in the things. I can put my 4 kids in it. And I can drive them around all over the place. So my values have shifted. And so I think it's a good idea where every so often you check to see, have your values shifted? Or sometimes the organization's values has shifted. The first company that I was a facilitator for ended up getting bought. And they moved away from their value of facilitation and organizational development into something completely different. Now I'll tell you, Shayna, I want to get back to what you were talking about. The first time that I did a values sort, I realized, well, I'm not aligned to this organization that I've been a part of. They've moved. I didn't move in that case, they had, right? And I realized that I was no longer aligned with this group. So what I would say is be careful when you're doing one of these value sorts, because about 3 months later, I was like looking for another job. Like I was off and on the road and doing something else. This is called Images of Organizations. It is loosely based on the work of Gareth Morgan. If you search for him, you can find out a whole lot of other stuff about him. But this is just a way of saying, are we in alignment with each other? Okay. Kissimmee, you've had your hand up for forever. What's going on?
I found this activity interesting because I've done like personal value identification before, where I figure out how I want to operate, but I have never thought about how a process or an activity might fuel, like what's fueling for me, like what's life bringing. And so that's different. And as I think about how these values build off of like my personal operation values, it's really interesting to see how directly they translate and they build off of one another. But I've never like done this level of I don't know, like identification. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up. So that is an important nuance with the prompt for this one. There's tons of different value sorts that are out there where they just say, what's important to you? I really like the prompt where it's, what is it that drives you? What is it that motivates you? What is it that fuels you, right? Because what happens is like, okay, well, there's these things that are, I mean, yeah, they're important to me, but they're table stakes, right? Like this is like, I mean, I'm going to assume that if I'm working with other people, because remember, ultimately, this is about what does it take to be in partnership with others, that they also have traits like honesty and integrity. That's table stakes. What I want is I want to work with people that really motivate me and push me to be my best self, right? And so that's why, you know, we have this slight angle on these core values to focus on that element of it, okay? So that's core values. Let's do the other half of the equation, which is operating norms. Now, this is a little bit different, okay? Let me give you a couple. These are real life examples. So this is like Chris's and mine operating norms. These are things that we've agreed to and developed over time. And for me, some of these go like way back, like 10 years ago. So one of our norms is to be a Swiss Army knife. Okay, that is a shorthand reference to the behavior of finding and filling gaps. So if we get into a facilitation and I need to, I don't know, break into the janitor's closet and vacuum the floor before I actually do a facilitation, I will do that. A true story, by the way, that actually happened. There was a party, you know, the day before, they hadn't cleaned up after it, and there was, you know, Play-Doh that was ground into the carpet. So we find and fill gaps. We identify those things that have to be in place, okay? Yeah, Tiff says that was definitely giving the true story vibe. Thank you. Having adult-to-adult conversations. Again, this is another one that's critically important for us. What that means is if you mess up, you fess up. You clean up. If you screw something up, that's fine. This is just like, this isn't brain surgery. This isn't rocket scientists. People are not going to die because like we didn't get a proposal in on time. You know, we talk about it. We give and receive feedback to each other, and we air stuff out. We work it out. But we have adult-to-adult conversations. Now, let me just say the opposite of an adult-to-adult conversation is artificial harmony. And I think that most dysfunctional groups, it's not that they fight with each other, it's that they have got too much artificial harmony. But that's a story for another time. Yeah, terminal niceness, Nancy, is another way of looking at it. Midwest nice or Nebraska nice is another way that you can say that, right? Bless your heart, right? Like, what are you really saying there? Run as lean as possible. Again, another one that's super important to Chris and I. We practice minimalism, essentialism, and simplicity. We don't create work for work's sake. We don't just create systems just to have systems. So it's about flexibility and agility rather than having rigid systems and structures that we can't pull ourselves out of. Just enough structure to maintain sanity. Now you can read through a couple of these other ones. Responding fast, having an abundance mindset. But the goal here is that you identify really three things. First of all, what is the shorthand norm that you refer to? Okay, what's the operating norm? Because this becomes part of your vernacular. This becomes part of your language. Like, hey, Chris, I need you to be a Swiss Army knife on this one. This one's a little kludgy, right? We're going to go to St. Louis, and who knows what they're going to ask us to do. Literally, we're going to go to St. Louis in about a week, and who knows what they're going to be asking us to do. So we're going to be finding and filling gaps. Hey, Chris, I need you to be a Swiss Army knife. She's going to recognize that, and she's going to know, all right, I need to be a little flexible because it's part of our vernacular. So first, you recognize the operating norm. What is that shorthand phrase that you can use to trigger those second part behaviors that you're looking for? Chris, I need you to be flexible on this one. This one, we're going in, you know, no VFR, no visual flight rules. You know, it's vague, it's ambiguous, but we're going to need to find and fill gaps. That was an Air Force reference just for Chris. And then you can take it to the next level and identify an interview question. Now, let me slow down and talk about this for a second. So it would be really, really easy to say, hey, Chris, tell me about a time when you've found and filled gaps. But if I were to do that, I'm giving her a clue into what I want the answer to be. Okay? What I really want is to pull out from her the behaviors, the specific behaviors when she identified that for herself. And what I also want to do is I want to identify what that looks like, and most importantly, what it doesn't look like. Let me give you an example. So if I was looking for the behavior of finding and filling gaps, I would ask a question like, hey, tell me about when you've had to do something that you've never done before. Okay? And if she answers, what am I looking for there? If she answers like, you know what, I would really lean into this, I would do some research. I'd try to find somebody that like knows their way around. I would ask to shadow someone. I'd ask to observe someone. That's exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for, okay? I want to get my hands into this. I want to figure it out, right? But if she answers it another way, it's like, well, before I really lift a finger, I want to make sure that I'm really, really good at this thing, right? So I'm gonna, I'm gonna go off and get a doctorate degree in this thing before I actually do this. I'm not looking for somebody meticulous here, right? I'm looking for somebody who can just like lean into this and take some risks and try to make it work, right? Without having to be an expert. So the point here with the interview questions is first identifying the behaviors that you're after. Write a question that could be answered either way and identify what this looks like when it's identifying the behaviors that you want and then the behaviors that you don't want, okay? Now, before I open it up and give you guys a little bit of time to work on this, what questions do you have about this? You're going to identify the norm, the behavior, and then an interview question that could be answered either way. Got it? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. How did that go? Who had one norm, behavior, and interview question? Just one. Nobody got any? Okay, Tiff got one. How about who got two? Okay, somebody got two, and then so did Anita, so did Nancy. Who got three? Who was able to get three? Oh, okay. That's me and Anita. And Kissin. Anita got a few. What about four? Who got four? Who got five? Wow. Shane, I didn't see your hand go up. How many did you get?
I kind of got caught up on the norms. Like I
Oh,
was so
gotcha.
excited about the short phrases for the norms that I stayed there and I was really getting energized.
That's cool.
The
This is
clarity. Yeah.
I just wanted you to do a, that's all right. So this was to get you started, right? This should be like
Yeah.
a quiet, reflective thing and probably not in front of, 12 other people. Let's hear a few of them though, and you can give me as much as you want. If you just want to do the norm, that's fine. If you want to go norm and behavior and interview question, that's okay too, but I would love to hear what you all came up with. So why don't you, whoever goes off mute, I'll see it and then I'll call on you. Nancy.
I, so one of mine was deliver excellence. And for behaviors, I had do whatever's necessary in the moment to assure a successful outcome. And then prepare thoroughly and thoughtfully for any engagement, meeting, or call. But I totally failed on coming up with interview questions for either of them.
All right, awesome. By the way, Nancy, you and I should probably never work together because, like, I'll show up at a meeting and be like, "What am I doing?" Like, where's that? Where's
No, we
that
would be
back of the
great
napkin?
together.
What was I doing here again? All right, so who might be able to help Nancy? So if hers is delivering excellence, and if it's about being like thoroughly prepared, right? What might be, yeah, and actually, Shayna, this actually gets back to what you were talking about before too. So sometimes we do these things and it's about social desirability. So if you go back to Shayna's earlier point about how it's like, well, is this who I am, or is this how I want people to see me, or what I think I should be? So when we talk about that in like psychometrics, that's called, social desirability. And so ideally, your interview questions should be asked in such a way that, you can encourage people to actually give you the negative answer and it's not going to sound bad, right? So who might be able to help out with that one? It's about preparedness,
That's great.
excellence. Good one. Martha's got, can you tell
That's
me about a
great.
time when you felt that a project didn't meet your standard of excellence? What did you do? Great one. Very good. I might say, how much prep time do you need before a meeting? And then walk me through that. What goes into that? That, somebody could say 5 minutes and that'd be a great answer. Somebody could say 5 hours and that could also be a great answer. Kissimmee, can you describe your process for preparing for X? Yeah. Yeah. If you wanted to be really, I don't want to say sneaky about this, but you could say, where do you stand? Are you somebody who likes to fly by the seat of their pants? Or are you meticulous and planful? That's kind of like an either or. Tiff, what do you do to support yourself to be prepared for an important event? Great question there. Okay, thank you, Nancy. Who's got another one? Norm, behavior, interview question. Shayna, what do you got?
I was just gonna add on to that, the thought process, that you might be able to use a how might you, or how would you, set up a scenario for
Totally.
the interview question. But so yeah, I'll share mine. And as I'm reading mine again, I'm reminded of why I love working with you so much. Because these norms, I'm like, this is exactly what you do. So I have it, the first one, I haven't clearly articulated it, but it's like we speak clearly and directly, not like so that people have to figure out what you're saying. Um, Not in code, because some people speak in code and you have to figure it out. We discuss ideas. We love to learn. We are willing to say no. We're decisive. We learn from our mistakes. So
Good one.
those would be my norms.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right. So who can help out with that one? So I heard, let's do, pick one of those, Shayna. Which one would you like to kind of workshop?
I would like to workshop. We are willing to say no.
Okay. Who can think of, and you had some behaviors identified underneath that, right?
No, I didn't get to the behaviors.
Okay. To me, the being willing to say no, that almost is the behavior, so that could be a
Okay.
both and, right?
Okay.
The norm might be something along the lines of, we hold space for ourselves, or we practice work-life balance, or, we manage our own backlog, although that's kind of a behavioral side of it too, right? Um, Tiff says, we know and honor who we are. Good one. Cool. Who's got an interview question for that one, though? That one's a little bit tricky, right? That one's about how, if the behavior you're trying to get at is saying no, what's an interview question?
How would you handle a situation where you were asked to do something that goes against your core values?
It's a good one. I'm hearing in Shayna's, where does the saying no come from? Is it about like overload, or is it about, to Chris's point, is it about like ethics and values? Why might we say no?
I think it's everything. It's like it honestly comes from this thought that you always have to say yes and I'm like, yes and is overrated. Can we
Yeah.
say no?
Yeah. You've got some great ideas in chat. So Tiff says, what do you need to know or see to say no to a potential project or customer? Nancy, how would you handle a situation where a client asked you to take on more work than you could handle? Okay. If you were going to do a very kind of like a broad question just to see where they went, you could say, how do you manage the backlog of your work? Right? That's very, very, very open-ended. People could like do pretty much anything with that one. Another one would be, when have you had to say no to a client? Tell me
I
about
like
that.
that. Yeah.
Good one, Shayna. I'll tell you what, let's do one more. So does somebody have a norm, a behavior, an interview question that they want to share? Who haven't we heard
I
from?
can
Yeah.
share
Tiffany.
one. My norm is don't pull rank.
Mm.
So mine is more about like coming in as a junior person, right? So the behavior is having mutual respect or expecting mutual respect. And my interview question is, can you describe a time when someone used their positional authority to influence a decision, and how was that received?
Good one. So what I like about that is that there's no judgment that's baked into that question, right? You could be asking that question, and if somebody is in the habit of using rank, they could read that question and be like, well, I told who and who, so and so who the boss was, right? And it might be like it sounds like that might be the answer that you're going for, when in fact it's not. You're after the exact opposite of that. Excellent example, Kissimmee. All right, so let's zoom out on this. Oh, we're done. So let's talk about usage for this again. So you can use it with interview questions. You can use it, and by the way, interview is not limited to people that are W-2s with you. These could be your associates. These could be your teaming partners. These could be like, Nancy's like, hey, Brian, let's work together. I would ask her some of these questions just to see what her style is, to see if we're a good fit or not. okay? You know, especially as independents, as entrepreneurs, I think it's a good idea to float some of these by them and say, hey, just to let you know, before we start working together, here's what's important for me so that I can be in partnership with you, and tell me likewise what is important for you so that I can meet you where you are. Okay. Final thoughts, questions before I turn off the recording, and we'll see you at the next one. Any final thoughts? Yay! All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop. Thanks everybody for showing up. Oh, before I forget, let me drop in the magic number, magic button. So again, we are not charging for these. So NOVA Scribes has moved away from a pay model to a donation model. And so we are borrowing from Frederick Laloux in Reinventing Organizations, a pay what feels right. If you got anything out of this, just go ahead and click the link, buy us a coffee, whatever. And this works its way back into IFEP and NOVA Scribes, and we will see you at the next one. So let me go ahead and hit stop.